Hello and welcome to the Cali Flap channel, and something a little bit different today as we are talking about this man in the background and his 2025 challenge in the red of Ferrari. So Lewis has likely been all over your socials and sport news outlets this week as he finally started working with Ferrari and looking a bit like a mafia boss there in the background before donning the famous red of Ferrari and hitting the track for the first time in red in a 2023 car. And I'm really keen to see how Lewis performs at Ferrari, and today I'm going to give my prediction, but I'm keen to hear your thoughts, so do get involved in the comments. And if you like this content, please do like the video, really does help me out. And if you aren't already, please do subscribe to the channel. We've typically posted our gaming series on F1 Manager 24, but I am looking to continue to bring such videos as today to the channel on a regular basis. So do let me know if you like this kind of content, and we shall certainly continue with it. So firstly, let's just do some teammate head-to-head comparisons with Charles and Lewis in their respective teams in 22, 23 and 24. So looking at the last 3 years between Leclerc and Sainz and Lewis and George. So if we look at the two Ferrari men, or one ex-Ferrari man now in Carlos Sainz, who's at Williams, and this is the 2022 season. So as we can see here, which will become a common theme, Leclerc outqualified Sainz 15-7. Races pretty close, to be fair, 12-9, but advantage to Charles again. And points quite a bit of difference there in the 2022 season. So Charles takes that, but as I say, pretty close on the race results. Then we move into 2023. As I say, that theme of qualifying definitely continues here. Leclerc 15-7 on the qualifying front. But races, again, very close, 11-9, but it is in favour of Leclerc again. And those points even closer, just 6 points in it in the 2023 season. Then we go to the most recent season, so 2024, which we just had. And as I've mentioned, the qualifying form really is a theme with Leclerc. And again, 14-9 on the qualifying front. So that's really where Sainz has probably struggled up against Leclerc, is that out-and-out pace. And I honestly do think over one lap, Charles is probably the quickest driver on the grid. The only other one close to him is, of course, Max Verstappen. But he is rapid over one lap. What do we think in the comments on that? Do you think Charles is the quickest with one lap pace? Let me know down below. And I think sometimes that can go against Charles because he is always pushing quite hard, and he, as I say, he's rapid over one lap. But we do see a few mistakes creeping in. I think that is because he's pushing sometimes over the limit. So that's sometimes the only thing that goes against Charles. Races in the season just gone. Leclerc has edged that quite a bit, and the points very similar to sort of the difference in their first season. So I think overall there, Sainz has been a very good teammate. He's been competitive in race trim. He's had really good race pace. Carlos reminds me a bit more like a Jenson Button kind of driver. You know, he's very smooth. Of course, he's the smooth operator. He's not someone who really looks like he's really aggressive in the car. He's just very, very smooth and has good race pace. And that's probably what lets him down in qualifying, because he's not got that out-and-out one-lap pace. But over the course of a race, looking after the tyres, looking after the car, and having consistent lap times, he's very much there. So in summary on this one, Leclerc has certainly edged his teammates over Carlos Sainz. But what is a clear theme, as I've been sort of banging on about here, is that Leclerc is very much dominant in that qualifying pace. But they're certainly a lot closer in race trim. So keep that in mind as we jump over now and compare the two Mercedes drivers. So here we have Lewis against George then, starting again at that 2022 season. And very interesting reading, because there's been lots made of Lewis's qualifying pace, but that's more recent. So as you can see in 2022, Lewis actually outqualified George 13-9. Race-wise, George got two better results, 12-10. Podiums, more podiums for Lewis. Points-wise, Russell got more points. So I'd say they're actually very evenly matched in that first year, to be honest with you. There was a lot made about George actually beating Lewis as teammates in that season. And there was talk of Lewis, you know, being more of the guinea pig, using different concepts on the car, different designs, running different setups. I don't know how true that is, to be honest with you. But I think if you look at it, George did great in that 2022 season to match, or even better, Lewis. But I would say they're pretty evenly matched across that 2022 season. But I say, interesting stat there was Lewis did actually outqualify George in 2022. Then we move to 2023, and the qualifying has evened out. Couldn't get any more even. It's a draw, 11-11. But Lewis, a lot more dominant on the races there, 15-7. And by virtue of that, more points. You have to say Lewis having the much better 2023 season. But the one I really want to get my teeth into is this 2024 season. And you have to say George has really had the better of Lewis across 2024. Now, I think there's two ways to look at this, or two thoughts really. One being, has age caught up to Lewis? Has his skill and performance level dropped? I mean, we've seen that in F1 through its history, and even recent history, very recently, Danny Rick, but even going back, still recent history, Sebastian Vettel, Kimi Räikkönen, drivers that had really good pace, challenging for titles or winning world championships, and then that pace just dropping either through age or lack of desire. So they're the two things I'm really questioning about Lewis here through this 2024 season. Has it been a case that, as it will to all of us, age has caught up with him, and this is now Lewis's level? He's going to struggle to compete with some of these younger guys, George, Charlie's new teammate, Max? Or is it the second side of that, and it's actually that desire, motivation? The thing we've got to consider for 2024, it would have been a very different season for him. He would have been left out of a lot of meetings, of course. He wouldn't have known what's coming in the Mercedes pipeline because he's moving teams. He probably felt a bit disconnected. Was he really that motivated when he's really being charged by that move to Ferrari in 2025? All of those, we're never really going to know. And I don't think we can really answer that until he finishes the 2026 season. And I'll get on to why we can't really answer that into 2025, in my opinion, shortly. But again, let me know in the comments, what do you think on this? And especially this 2024 season. Is it a clear drop-off in performance from Lewis due to age? And as I say, just a lack of skill or decline in skill and performance? Maybe George has improved and it's sort of balancing it out. Or is it that second one? Lewis just didn't have that motivation and desire in 2024. I'm going to see a much different Lewis Hamilton as we head into 2025. But just going back to actually some of the numbers on here, as I say, you've got to say, near enough dominant for George Russell. 14-9 in the races head-to-head. Very dominant in quali. 19-5. So there has been this thing that George has outqualified Lewis as teammates. But as I say, once you go through this data, Lewis actually outqualified him in 2022. They matched each other last year. But this year, very much, George Russell has outqualified him. But George is good at qualifying. He's got good one-lap pace. He was known as Mr. Saturday, of course, in that Williams. So, George is no slouch. And that will be a concern for Lewis, the qualifying pace. And then wins, they both shared 2 wins. Podiums, Lewis actually better podiums, and points very close. But it doesn't tell the whole story. I think their race head-to-head in qualifying is more damning for Lewis on that. But what's also interesting is if we go back a few years in Mercedes, when another 7-time world champion was in the car and he had a younger teammate. And I'm talking about Michael Schumacher and Nico Rosberg, of course. And I thought this was quite interesting reading. If we head to motorsport.com, and this compares Rosberg versus Schumacher in their 3 seasons as teammates. And I would say there's a couple of caveats to this. Michael Schumacher was a little bit older than Lewis Hamilton. I think he was a couple of years older than what Hamilton is now compared to George. So what Schumacher was compared to Rosberg. And also Schumacher had a break from the sport. So I think, they are substantial things to consider. But what's interesting here, and actually I would add another caveat, is I don't think Schumacher ever come back to Mercedes to become world champion. It might have been on his mind to become an 8-time world champion, but I think he was more in it to support Ross Brawn, support the team, and help build them for the future. And that's exactly what he did, of course. But what's interesting, if you look at this, Rosberg outqualified Michael in all areas, really, qualifying 41-17 across their 3 seasons, but ahead in 2 car finishes. So when they both finished, this is who was winning in terms of who came on top, and Rosberg 22-15. So where George is the younger teammate to Lewis, Rosberg was to Schumacher, and Rosberg actually had the better of Schumacher across their 3 seasons. So again, is this indication that once drivers get to a certain age or a certain mindset in terms of desire and motivation, it's just too difficult to perform? Of course, Alonso still going strong at his age, but again, he's not been in a championship winning team or even a team that can win races, compete for podiums regularly, apart from that little spell they had with Aston last year. So I thought it was just interesting to have a look at some of those comparisons with Rosberg and Schumacher compared to Lewis and George. So now really to my predictions for Lewis going forward with Ferrari. And I think I'll go back to a couple of the themes we've looked at here. One is that qualifying theme, certainly in 2024 for Lewis, where George ultimately and no doubting had the better of him. And with Charles over Sainz, Charles has just shown year on year, he's a fantastic qualifier. So I think that will be a concern for Lewis as he heads to Ferrari. The other thing, again, is that question mark over this 2024 season. Has it been a natural decline in Lewis's ability due to age, or is it just purely motivation and desire? Because I do think at times in 2024, Lewis was checked out. There was some rumblings about Toto even making references to having to replace Lewis at some time. So, and with him going to Ferrari and the Mercedes not competing, as I do think there was an element of Lewis being checked out. But ultimately, it's hard to prove any of this. It's just an opinion of what we can see out there. But of course, if 2024 for Lewis's decline was a lack of motivation and desire, that will not be the case in 2025. He will have fire in the belly as he goes to the red of Ferrari. However, in 2025, I do think Lewis is going to struggle. And my opinion is, especially on qualifying, he's not going to compete with Charles. But actually, I do think Charles will beat him in all areas in terms of race finishes, as well as points. So I do think in all areas, Charles is going to have the better of Lewis in 2025. And also, I think if Ferrari have got a championship winning car, I would not say Lewis will be world champion, but Charles would have a good chance. And really my reasoning for that, I just think it's going to be a tough ask for Lewis to go to a new team, a new environment, and it's a very different environment from Ferrari. It's a different country, of course, from where they're based, compared to how he's been with Mercedes and McLaren before that. He's always had the Mercedes connection, even when he was at McLaren. So he's got to settle into that new team. He's got to acclimatise. It's going to take him a little bit of time to acclimatise to that. He's clearly making the right steps to do that. We've obviously seen the news with Angela coming back to Lewis's team, and I'm sure he's got other team sort of in the background that have come over from Mercedes or has been part of his group at Mercedes going to Ferrari. So that will no doubt help, but he's got to acclimatise to the rest of that Ferrari team, his pit crew, his race engineer. But even if he did acclimatise really well, the other problem Lewis has got is what's on the other side of the garage. He's not joining Ferrari with a rookie coming into that team alongside him. He's joining someone who is so established. He's Ferrari through and through, with Charles Leclerc next to him. He's been with that team for years, been in the Ferrari family for even longer than he's been in the Formula One team, and he's one of the best drivers on the grid. He already knows the car, he's comfortable as Charles, and that is just going to be a hard task for Lewis. So my opinion, and what I think will happen in 2025, is I think Ferrari will have a good car. I think they may challenge for Constructors and World Drivers' Championship, but I don't think Lewis will be able to challenge for the Drivers' Championship. I think Charles will outperform him in all areas, and Lewis will be looking at 2025 very much as a year to acclimatise, and he'll be focused on 2026. Firstly, he'll be hoping Ferrari have nailed those regulations, and secondly, he'll be hoping that what he's been able to achieve in 2025, heading towards the back end of that, he's up to speed and he's ready to challenge Charles, because if Ferrari produce a dominant car in 2026, we know Lewis will have the desire to win that 8th World Championship, and with a dominant car, he'll be able to beat the other drivers on the grid, but he's got to beat his teammate. And he struggled this year with George, and I think it's even harder task to beat Charles, especially in 2025. So there we have it. That's my thoughts. As I say in summary, 2025, I think Charles will have the beating of Lewis, and we have to reserve judgment until 2026 to see if Lewis has still got what it takes to fight for a world championship if he has the car. But let me know what you think of this video. As I say, if you like these kind of videos, I will do more. And of course, let me know down in the comments, what do you think in 2025 in a teammate battle? Is it going to be Lewis or Charles Leclerc? And we'll be back very soon.